of apartheid, but also a common enemy today, at this time the coronavirus, and once again South Africa and Cuba standing side by side. I understand that while majority of the healthcare professionals who are arriving here will head towards the buses that we showed you a bit earlier on, which will take them to the quarantine area. There are about 20 of those personnel who will then be met by the ministers who are here, including the Defense Minister, Nosiviwe Mapisa Ngakula, the Minister of International Relations, Dr. Naledi Pandor, as well as the Minister of Higher Education and Training, who's also the General Secretary of the South African Communist Party, Dr. Bladen Zimande, is also here. All right, finally arrived, and if you could take a look towards that direction there, some of the officials who have come from the Cuban embassy are waving flags, the Cuban flag, welcoming their compatriots. Some of these doctors are from their home country. It certainly is a moment of pride for Cuba and also for South Africa. All right, as the aircraft comes to a stop, you'll see there the Cuban flag. Those are just some officials that were accompanying the Cuban ambassador in South Africa. And it certainly is a moment of pride. They were also, asking, you'll see the personal protective gear by some of those individuals also who are at the buses there, who will interact with these Cuban doctors or health care professionals who are arriving in the country. So certainly nothing is being left to chance in terms of following the necessary protocols, medical protocols. And part of that is that in a statement earlier, you heard that Dr. Willem Kiese had indicated that while the medical practitioners had been tested before they left Cuba, they will then, as they arrive now, be quarantined for 14 days. And certainly that is the precautionary measures that are being taken. You'll see there in the black jacket as well, towards one of those areas. I know from the Department of Health, the National Department of Health, was Dr. Anban Pillay, who was also here, the Director General within the Department of Health, the National Department of Health in South Africa. All right, big placards of welcome here at the Waterkloof Air Force Base. And, despite, South Africa being lauded by including the World Health Organization for its efforts in, managing this entire global crisis, South Africa certainly has been lauded for the efforts it has put in place. So any other further assistance that could help South Africa in curbing the further spread of the coronavirus is certainly welcome, and certainly from a friend of decades that has assisted this particular country in very dark times, again extending its hand here today in a show of international solidarity while that country battles its own challenges with the very same pandemic that South Africa is grappling with now. Still, it manages to send hundreds of medical practitioners to come and assist its longtime friend. If you've just joined us, these are live pictures from the Waterkloof Air Force Base in Pretoria. Many messages of, just take a look at that one, for example. Welcome the Cuban doctors. Just loads of excitement. We'll ask, you hear Cuba? Let me just be quiet for a moment. It's just Cuba, Cuba. Chanting Cuba, Cuba. Welcome Cuban doctors. And there you have it, chanting slogans of Cuba, Cuba, Cuba. A moment of pride, certainly. You would see some of the pictures there of the late, leader of Cuba, Fidel Castro. And we know what a friend of South Africa Fidel Castro was. I mentioned earlier, of course, very close to Madiba, the former late president of South Africa, Nelson Mandela, where they stood side by side and, really showed a brotherly love for each other on the continent, and were committed to the freedoms of their people, irrespective of, whether during the apartheid regime in South Africa there were others who perhaps believed otherwise. They both stood steadfast in their belief of a better Africa, and you'd see some of those posters once again. And I can tell you, Simpiwe, it's just started raining. Can you imagine? It's just started raining, and we're going to try and take for some cover. Hopefully we'll be able to. Personal protective gear there you will see. And those are the officials that will interact with the doctors who will be disembarking from the South African Airways aircraft. In case you've just joined us, these are live pictures from the Waterkloof Air Force Base in Pretoria. 217 medical professionals from Cuba landing in South Africa to assist in the fight against COVID-19. Those, of course, being the buses that will ferry them from here, the Waterkloof Air Force Base. Certainly, no chances being taken. You'll see there the officials that will interact first with the officials, the healthcare professionals who are on the plane. Of course, medical staff will be sent, or their port health officials will be sent on there to test them and to check their temperature. And all of that is certainly procedure that you will see anywhere around the world. Whether there is assistance that's being sought by any country, the necessary protocols, medical protocols, need to be followed just so that to ensure that everyone is safe. All right, just stay with us there for a few moments, just to let our viewers also know that we've extended our broadcast time this evening, because certainly this is a moment here in South Africa where if you look at the relations between these two particular countries, both political and social, is certainly, a friendship that these two countries have had that certainly, many can say has been a brotherly relationship between two countries that have always sought to assist each other. Not forgetting that South Africa also just recently sent medical supplies to that country. And it's this very same aircraft that is returning here today with medical personnel. So you'd see the personal protective gear, some of the officials who will be boarding the aircraft just getting themselves ready before they board that aircraft, and then obviously check the temperatures of these healthcare professionals.
So can I engage? Can I talk with Chriselle?
Well, Simpiwe, you can certainly engage with me. I heard you a little bit there. I can certainly engage with you if you would like.
Well, most definitely, Griselda. And yeah, you've gone at great length, Griselda, trying to articulate the kind of relationship that South Africa has enjoyed with Cuba, more especially in the medical sector. And as we've just seen, as you just joined us now, the Cuban doctors, about 200 medical practitioners from Cuba, have already arrived. Now these are officials just waiting to, waiting to welcome this medical team, and they will be whisked straight to an undisclosed location in Pretoria, where they will be placed on a mandatory 14-day quarantine. And we do understand that Griselda, that about 30 Cuban doctors will be assigned to the South African National Defense Forces. Yeah, and the rest, we do believe, will be assigned to the Department of Health. Now, it's very interesting, Griselda, to take into cognizance the fact that in spite of the crippling U.S. sanctions, that Cuba has managed to play a key role in the war against COVID-19, as many countries are inward looking, just taking care of their own problems with regards to strengthening their health systems to curb the spread of COVID-19. And the country has sent medical teams to 19 countries, including Italy, including Angola, Jamaica, Mexico and Venezuela, if I'm not mistaken, the Griselda, and that's a total of about 900 doctors. And, and as you know, this is
fact,
go on, Griselda.
In fact, some people, let me bring you up to speed. All right. The aircraft now opened. The aircraft now open. You'll see the team heading towards the aircraft now, which will then board the aircraft and then take the temperature of those medical doctors. You will see the South African Airways personnel are ready to get them back onto the runway.